Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today joined by friend of the show, everybody's favorite guest, somebody I do legitimately like talking to because you just refuse to not say the thing that will piss everybody off. Matt Moore of the Action Network is here. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. My wife always says, she's just like, you're just the most habitual bear spoon poker. She's just like, you just poke bears with spoons over and over and over again, and are always surprised when they snap at you.
So you're the Dylan Brooks of content.
Yeah, that sounds fair. That's about, plus minus is about the same. Shooting percentage is about the same. Sounds future contract upside probably about the same.
I just saw like all of that cross your eyes. Just like it was that was actually a wonder to behold live. That was great. All right, so today we have a few things to discuss. About an hour or so before you and I started recording, we got the Ja Morant Friday news dump, and then you had mentioned in our text back and forth that you wanted to talk about the Lakers and why you hate them.
Sure.
and all of that stuff and whatever comes up in between. Just really quickly though, I do kind of want to start with Ja. I find it simultaneously fascinating and not fascinating. Like this is just the world that we live in. That the punishment had been negotiated between the league and the players union. Agents knew about it, which means every power broker or every newsbreaker that you know in the NBA knew about it and held off on any kind of leak as it pertains to the punishment until the league was able to get it to a Friday news dump. I don't know. I should be clear. I don't know that for sure. A lot of that is just kind of putting one and one and one together. But I just find the way that information is, the economy of information and the way that it works, I don't know that I've ever seen it so clear as I've seen it this season.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this I do think is there's more leveraging. I think it used to be. I think that there used to be kind of a sense of investigative journalism was really investigative. Like you try and like really you develop a relationship and you work a source. And now it's more a lot of like you're trading information, or this person needs to get the information because they work for a partner, right? Like,
yeah.
If you think about it, two of the three biggest newsbreakers work for league partners. And like Adrian Wojnarowski was a legend before he went to ESPN, but he does work for ESPN now as a league partner. Chris Haynes was always good. That's how he got the job, but he is with Turner. And so like that's part of the negotiation. I will say like the sense that I got from being at the finals and talking to people is that they like, I don't think that everyone knew the number. I think everyone knew a range. I went on Memphis radio yesterday and they were asking me about it. And they were like, we know you don't know for sure, but what are you expecting? And I was like, it's going to be a number between 18 and 28. That's the number that I gave. And that was an educated guess based off of.
It's also what Woj said this morning.
Yeah.
This morning said it's going to be over 18.
Yeah. And so like you get like, if you pay enough attention and you talk to enough people, you get a sense for these type of things. But I will say like, I think that Joe Dumars ultimately was the one, like I think the number of people that actually knew the number was small. And so there wasn't a whole lot of dispersion of the actual number. I think if you ask Chris Haynes 4 days ago, Chris is probably like, I don't know. I know what I think it is, but I don't know for sure. I think if you asked what was the same thing, he'd probably say the same. So a lot of this is like, there's a distribution of information because it's like, come on, man, like you got to tell me something. Like, what's the deal? It could be like, it's going to be substantial. Like, it's not going to be, you should not expect this because this is part of the dynamic too. If you have a relationship with somebody, the biggest thing in media when you have a relationship with somebody is that, and like, I'm not saying I'm not on that level. I'm not on like 8 levels below that, but I understand how the media game works really well. Like that's one of the things that I do understand very well. One of the dynamics is if you have a relationship with someone, that source does not want you to be embarrassed. And so you have to go
Yeah.
on these shows and you have to answer questions. Like I go on these radio shows and I get asked about things. And so like sometimes I just have to be like, I have no idea. I haven't heard anything about it. Right.
Hmm.
There's an expectation that you know everything. And so the people that are the most connected, like Chris Haynes, like Adrian Wojnarowski, like Shams Charania, those guys need to have like an understanding of what not to say. Not to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's looking at maybe as many as 10 games. And then it comes out to be 30 games.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like that was way off. You don't know anything. So that management of things is kind of where this gets to is, can you guide me in a direction to where I won't be wrong? Because like I ask a lot of people, if I say that, like instead of asking for information, I'll say, if I say this, am I wrong? And that
Yeah.
is part of how like these things get negotiated out in terms of the media.
Yeah, I can just kind of say from my perspective. I remember, and like you said, I'm like rungs below you, but I went on some radio show, and one of the people that I talked to fairly regular heard me on that radio show because I was talking about somebody that they were connected to, and I hopped off of it, and I'm not going to say specifically what it was for pretty obvious reasons that what I was talking about. But I was just like on the show. I was like, I have a vague idea, but I don't know enough about this to speak definitively, right? And then after I got off the phone with that radio station, I got a text from this person who said, hey, hit me up next time and you can speak a little bit more definitively on it, and yeah, like that is, by the way, not a journalist, not interested in doing reporting unless I have I have it pretty damn well nailed down. But that's just kind of how this stuff, like to your point, kind of works, right? That back and forth. And another example of it, and I'm not judging because this is just kind of, I think, the world that we live in. But Bob Myers, after we got more clarity on the Andrew Wiggins situation, we found out he was coming back, sat there in a room full of journalists and said, hey, thank you guys for not doing this. And that was like wild to me to hear, right? It was really striking, like thanking journalists for not journalisming,
Yeah.
and again, like this is just kind of the world that we live in. And, that was, potentially very touchy information that, for whatever reason didn't get out. We still don't have, I don't think, very much clarity on it. And that's just kind of how things are going to go now. And I thought this was just another example of, and like I said, like this year has really made it clear to me of what you're talking about, the economy of information, the actual trading of that information. Because the other thing too is with people at like Woj and Shams and Haynes's level, is the people that they're getting information from, they also give information too. And that exchange is a really big part of this. And those entities that give stuff to them benefit also from that. So it's a more symbiotic relationship than I think it had been in the past. And this the way that this all went down, the Ja Morant suspension, 25 games seems about right to me. It was just kind of stupid behavior, and it was like extra stupid because it was the kind of stuff that like he apparently had told Adam Silver he was never, ever, 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 ever going to do again. So like I had a feeling, and like you're talking about, I had a feeling that the punishment was going to be fairly substantial. The fact that Adam Silver thought that it was so substantial it would take away from the finals also kind of, the implication there is, yeah, this is going to be big. So like 25 games seems about right. It's kind of whatever. We could talk about the impact on the league, but to me, what I found very interesting was this like encapsulating in a kind of roundabout way how things kind of go. And I thought you were somebody who is very open about this stuff, and I thought you were the kind of person to have that conversation with. What do you think of the Ja suspension? Like, what does it do to Memphis? Are they, they're such an interesting team to me because they kind of remind me of the Trailblazers back when like Rasheed Wallace was there and, Jermaine O'Neal was there, and that super, super talented team. I'm not going to repeat the name. that they were called back then. But and the way that they kind of remind me of that is that team was so insanely talented. You look at some of the names that like were on that squad and then went out and impacted, in organizations beyond that. But that group like they never took that step forward that they needed to, and for lack of a better term, they never really matured to a place where they could together reach their ceiling. And this Memphis team, feels like they have a couple pathways ahead of them. They could use this and grow up and actually reach that ceiling, or pieces of that team are going to go off and do things away from each other. What do you think?
So I think the grow up thing is interesting.
I hate saying grow up because like I myself am a jackass.
Well, and it sounds very patronizing, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong though. I think a lot of this is. I think there are two guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was Ja and I think there was Dylan, and Dylan's not gonna be there anymore. And Ja's either gonna get his head on straight or he's gonna be out of the league. He's going to lose all of this money, this money, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think there's enough of an investment in him to where somebody will get through to him. The other thing is like, I have a lot of confidence in the rest of it. Cause like, I just think that Desmond and Jaren are about the right things.
Yeah.
And if you follow, like, this is the thing is like Ja walks out and doesn't do media.
Mm-hmm.
Desmond stands up there and does the media. Jaren stands up there and does the media, and like talk to the media is whatever, but it's a sign of accountability.
Yeah.
And those guys, I think, are going to have like part of my thing is I'm not like the Grizzlies are going to win the championship next. No, they're not going to win the championship next year. But I actually am not that worried about their season from the perspective of if you fun exercise, go look at James Harden's numbers in 2012 and go look at Desmond Bane's numbers in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And compare those numbers. Now,
I love Bane's game so much.
Yeah,
like that series.
I'm not saying that Desmond's going to become James Harden multi-year MVP candidate, but my point here is like I think Desmond has a lot more to offer, and so like he'll get better, and Jaren will get better, and the team has a lot of runway because I think now the front office has a pretty clear indication of like, okay, we kicked the can down the road, we got to start like moving forward. Now, I will say, I've heard in the last week that they're once again shopping for a lottery pick. So I'm like, maybe they're going to do this thing again where they try and kick the can down the road, where they once again pick up another young player. But I think that there's room for them to go out and add veteran pieces that are not only going to help with the locker room and get the adults in the room, as Chris Vernon has mentioned, but also just like fill out the roster, get them better towards having a better half court offense. Because like that's what they need to develop. A lot of it last year was that the team itself, I think, took, and I don't think coaching wanted this. I think that coaching was kind of forced into it. The team was having so much success. It's like, well, I guess we don't need to change. Like, we're winning. Why would we need to change? Look at us. We're the number 2 seed in the West.
Yeah.
And it's like, all of this stuff about Ja will either pass or it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he will get through this or he will be one of those cautionary tales.
Yeah.
And honestly, like Memphis can do whatever. Memphis has done what it needs to in terms of being like putting an arm around him. I mean, like, you need to get this sorted out. Like, let us help you. Like, let us help you get through this. That's all you can really do. Because if you try and be like, people will kind of say, like, well, there's no accountability there. You need to, like, if you try and just discipline him, all you're going to do is alienate him and create and spiral him more.
Also, how do you hold a $300 million 23-year-old accountable? That just doesn't happen.
And even if you do, even if you want to get past like the power dynamics of it, which are difficult on its own, your ability to do so is also limited by what the effect is, which is like, if you don't connect with the tough love approach, he spirals more.
Yeah.
You have less of a connection to him.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to maintain this. And this is like whenever you have somebody that's this troubled, I think you have these kind of problems that you have to mitigate. But as far as like the franchise, I'm still like, I don't know, man. Like, they got a really smart front office. They got a really good coach. They got really good players. And I kind of feel like there's still an opportunity. Like, I think people are going to wake up in January and be like, oh, There's Memphis and like the four seed, and Ja played, didn't come back till December 19th. Wow. But look, a lot of it's on Ja, and I have concerns about Ja beyond this stuff. I have concerns about Ja in terms of I'm always going to be worried about his knees. I'm always going to be worried about his knees because of the way that he plays. Jaren's an injury risk. Like, there's all these ways that this can go sideways. But I also think that right now, like, part of this is because I'm now wired to look at this stuff from a betting perspective. Getting in on the bottom floor, not going to get much lower than this in terms of if you want to buy Memphis stock. So right now is probably, after selling Memphis stock pretty aggressively over the last couple of years, I have to wait to see what they do in free agency. But I'm like, I am more interested in buying Memphis stock right now than I was at any point in the last year.
I do wish we could do like there was team stock.
Yeah,
I wish that like that was because the title odds dropped, right, and OKC was plus 13,000 to win the championship, right, and I'm like, I don't think they're going to win a championship, but I think it's a higher likelihood than plus 13,000 on them, and yet, like, you can't quite trade. So, like, if that number goes from 13,000 to 1,300, it's not like I can, cash out. Like, that's not really how that works. So I do kind of wish we could figure out. I mean, there's so many other ways that we're gambling on sports. I wish that was another way that we could kind of do it. Teams, though, I don't know if I would feel comfortable doing that with players. I'm fine doing it with teams, but I think I'd be a little iffy about doing that with players. All right, let's segue awkwardly over to the Lakers, whom you hate. And I think right now, the kind of general consensus on the Lakers is that they're going to be pretty good next year. Pretty good. I don't think there are very many people who are saying, like, they are definitely going to win the championship. I don't think there are people who are saying, like, they are definitely destined to have, like, the third iteration of this weird kind of pseudo rivalry that they have with Denver, where they have met twice in the Western Conference Finals, and both of those teams that won that series went on to win the championship. I don't think there are people at that end of the spectrum, but I don't think that's the consensus. I think the consensus is that they're going to be pretty good, and then there's a lot of risk involved with what the Lakers are capable of next year. Where do you land in that range? Do you land, if that's like, a one take on them is sell off, they are never going to reach that height ever again. 10 being championship for sure. And then, like a 7 being the take that I kind of gave. Where would you sit in that 1 to 10 range?
I'm probably between a 4 and a 5.
Okay. Why?
So I'm not a 1 because they can get better, right? Mm-hmm. If someone is dumb enough to take D'Angelo Russell in a sign-in trade, this team can get way, way better. And there's like, I've heard now another team. So there's like 2 teams I've heard that are dumb enough to have interest in taking D'Lo. I don't know what to make of a lot of what we saw this season. And the Heat present a similar issue in that teams that were in the finals in 2020 that have iconic players in their franchise history, less so with the Heat than with the Lakers, even though the Lakers have such a long line of them. Well, one player. And then, like, their runs were made, and I was trying to talk about this. I don't trust March basketball. And for you, I understand why you're like, well, you got to understand, like, the way that they reconfigured the team and the trades. Malik Beasley did not play in the playoffs. Jared Vanderbilt was not playable by the end of the playoffs.
That's not what I've said.
I thought you said that to me yesterday.
No, I say that the only data sample that we have, the only data log that we have is March basketball and then into the playoffs, right? Like, that's all that we have with that iteration of the Lakers.
And so for me, I'm just like, here's what I when I look at that sample, here's what I look at. I don't trust March basketball at all because I've said this for years, and I got away with it with Denver this year, and it pisses me off so much that I abandoned it. I fell for it. They faked me out.
Yeah.
A third of the teams are just resting guys. It's just like, I got to get some time before the playoffs start because I got to play every other night, playing 40 minutes a night. A third of the teams are injured where they're just like, yeah, we had a good team, but like everybody got hurt. Everybody got hurt and our season's done. And the other section is literally trying to lose, actively trying to lose. Yeah. And the Lakers' strength of schedule, if you go through that roster, and I can do this with lots of teams and poke holes. Okay. But it doesn't make it necessarily as convincing to me. And then you look at the playoffs, but
it makes it less convincing because it's all that we have on them.
Right. And so then then it's like, well, but what about the playoffs? And it's like the Grizzlies. Okay. Who, like, you and I bet on the Lakers. I told you I was betting on the Lakers. We both had money on the Lakers. That was an easy one. Like, no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark. The Grizzlies don't have a half-court offense. They were a mess since that night in Denver. It's really crazy. The same night in Denver, the Nuggets effectively clinched the 1 seed. So the Grizzlies can't catch them. Brandon Clark suffers his injury.
Catastrophic, yeah.
And Ja goes to Shotgun Willies. Like, same night. Their entire season collapsed, okay? So then you get the Warriors, and the Warriors are an interesting one because I did think the Warriors would win because I was like, oh, the math game will work out. And then Klay Thompson shoots like 13%, right? Yeah. And that's not the only reason that they lost. I didn't realize it was very difficult the entire year to figure out.
And Poole was abysmal.
Like, are the Warriors what they've told us they are all year? Or are they still that team? And I kept giving them credit when I shouldn't have. And if you want to ask, aren't the Lakers better than you thought then? Yes, they are. They absolutely are. My issue is that sustaining these types of runs, even if we want to say that was valid, I am of the belief, and this is something I've been trying to yell at Heat fans about for the last 2 weeks. Every season's a microcosm. Every season's its own it's an own organism. It's got all these different parts and it moves. Even if it's the same players, it moves differently. But we also make this delineation between before the trade and after. And I'm like, guys, by the end of the playoffs, Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt weren't playing, and D'Angelo Russell was literally a negative.
Yeah.
So the 3 guys that they got in that trade, and you say, like, well, they got rid of Russ. Okay. But I need you to be able to show me a positive that you added to get better
Reeves,
rather than just a negative that you removed. Is Austin Reeves, LeBron, and AD, is that good enough to get you 50 wins in the Western Conference, regardless of what other pieces you have? And my answer to that is maybe, right? Is there a good likelihood that there is regression and that we're sitting here and you also have to bear in mind, if this was 2020, I'd feel differently. Not only because they won the title, but because LeBron was 4 years younger, because AD had 4 years fewer miles on him. Those 2 guys, we saw it. Those guys get hurt and the whole thing collapses and you have this miserable season. And so I lean more towards skepticism than I do they're going to be good, which is not to say that I'm like, they're definitely not going to be good. They could come out of free agency. I'm going to be like, all right, you know what? This is a really good roster. Cause I love Rui. I thought that was their best move. That was the trade, was adding Rui Hachimura, who I loved in Washington. I talked about him preseason, was like, hey, Rui's really made strides. What they got him for was a joke. That was an incredible trade for the Lakers. Deserves all the credit for that one. So LeBron and AD and Austin and Rui. Okay. That's 4 good players. I still got to see what they do with the rest of it. I will maybe be at a 6 if the free agency goes well. I may be at I will tell you that 4 is the floor. I won't go lower than this. I won't move more towards they're going to be bad. They're going to be a lottery team. This is the floor of where they're at, because I'm just look, we're making a lot of assumptions based off of a sample that's extremely suspect to me.
All fair. Here's how I'll answer the question as it pertains to what did you actually get in the Russ trade, right? and this is not just my take, but this is like the way that the Lakers are looking at this too.
Hmm.
When Russ was there, you were never going to get the Austin Reeves that we got after Russ was gone. And that's not to say that like they traded Russ to unlock Austin. It's that trading Russ unlocked Austin. So I think that's like, and I think
Hmm. Yep.
when you mention like, and this is, so on one side of the coin of what you're talking about here, you're saying they made that trade and they didn't necessarily get anything tangible last season from that trade other than like not having Russ because like you said, Malik Beasley just didn't play. Vanderbilt got played off the court in just about every series at some point, and D'Angelo Russell just was abysmal in the Western Conference Finals, and that's all true. But that means though that like the Lakers, with that going on, were still able to get to the Western Conference Finals. And if you just get if you're able to turn like Malik Beasley's team option contract into at say draft night or whatever, if you're able to turn that into a player and him in a draft pick or whatever into a player who plays in that situation, gets any time, any confident time in the playoffs, then the Lakers are therefore like better than they were last year, right? If like you're saying, if somebody is crazy enough to believe that D'Angelo Russell at 27 or 28 years old is going to unlock something further in his career, and you turn D'Angelo Russell into a player that you can play in the Western Conference Finals, then the Lakers are better than they were last year. And then if like Jared Vanderbilt, is like respectable from not just like as a shooter, but like as a finisher inside, and just takes any step forward there so that he can't get played off the court in every series that he was in last year, then the Lakers are better. And I think there's a pathway there. The thing that
Yeah.
concerns me is that I still am not positive that they understand the identity that they need to go in, right? An example of this is Eric Pincus will do this thing of Bleacher Report where he will throw out a hypothetical outcome that is not normally purely hypothetical.
Yeah.
It usually has something to do with what he has heard, right? And Eric, I'm sorry if I'm spewing trade secrets here, but the example that he threw out there the other day was, well, what if they go into next season thinking that they're going to start Austin Reeves at small forward? And what if they're able to bring Dennis Schroeder back? And what if they're able to get like either D'Angelo Russell or Chris Paul to come back and they start the year going super small? And I'm like, no, 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 no. Because what we just saw in two straight series with Denver is Denver was so much bigger and
Yeah.
similarly skilled to the two teams that they beat and beat the shit out of. Like when I say beat, I mean that literally. They were so much bigger than the Lakers and so much bigger than the Heat that like the outcomes there were inevitable without an injury happening, and and the injury didn't happen. And like for me, you look at Denver, and this is actually where I think losing to Denver specifically helps the Lakers. Hopefully, you look at Denver and you're like, all right, that's the bar. What do we have to get to beat them? And do they figure out the way that you do that is to get more physical and try to match up with that physicality? If that's the case, then I like the Lakers' chances of at least competing. But if they say to themselves, well, what if we zag? What if we get creative here? And what if we're just super small and we run them off the court? That's where I say you're screwed. You can't do that. It's not going to happen. So
Yeah.
so that
I mean,
like to what you're talking about, like with the 4 being the floor, and maybe 7 or 8 being the ceiling here, or I guess 10 is inherently the ceiling, but like the realistic ceiling is kind of like a 7 or an 8. I think that's going to be decided by whether or not the Lakers actually accept the identity that they should have accepted after winning a championship with that
yeah.
identity.
I mean, you're gonna need to find guys that are willing to play physical in order to do that. Like you're gonna have to find guys that are up for that kind of physical challenge,
Yeah.
and like you have LeBron, and then that's pretty much it as far as like guys that are able to play physical basketball, like unless they
Yeah.
have a huge size
Rui.
advantage.
Rui mixes it up a little bit,
Yeah,
but yeah.
Rui battled really well. So like here, the Austin question I think is fascinating. Okay, so one thing I do with all Lakers guys is I ask
Shit on them.
I asked Charlotte. I asked Charlotte test. Okay.
Okay.
If this player played for the Charlotte Hornets, what would I think about them?
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Kuzma,
You'd like them more
in 2020. Like I was like not in on Kuz in like 2019. Like I thought all the hype that you guys put on him, and I was like, come on, guys, like all right. But like starting in 2020, and honestly, especially in 2021, like I was like, no, if you put Kuzma on Charlotte, he'd be good. And there's proof of that, which is like he went to Washington and he's good.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like Northern Charlotte.
Right. He's good. If you take Austin Reeves and you put him on Charlotte, how do we think about him? And the answer is not like when I propose this kind of framework, it's like, so you think he sucks? No. Because I actually watched the Charlotte Hornets. And I would be like, oh, Austin Reeves is really good. But the difference is that Austin Reeves, I'd be like, who's really good is Austin Reeves for the Hornets. Versus with the Lakers, it's, who's a future all-star is Austin Reeves. And it's like, and I'm not trying to be like, he's not good. It's that conversation gets crazy. Like Austin last year, right, was 53, 40, 86 splits. That's awesome. That's so good. Is Austin Reeves a 50, 40, 90 guy? Like, do we think that, and that he's going into year 3. So I understand Lakers fans being like, why not? But this is one where this is not a Lakers thing that I do. I do this with everybody, which is I'm just like, you are always going to think your young guys are going to progress on an entirely linear trajectory. When a lot of times it's like, like all over the place. And so if Austin's not as good next year, what does that do? Because this is the thing is their margins here are very small because of LeBron and AD's contract. So it's like, if one of your pillars is Austin Reeves, who's a really good player, but if Austin takes even a half, if he's down to 47, 38 splits, that's a really good guard. That's a really good player. Yeah. If they take that approach, what does that do for them? And then, as you mentioned, like when I realized they were going to play him at small forward versus MPJ, I was like, oh, I'm hitting MPJ rebounds every single night. Yeah. I'm hitting MPJ at threes because I knew that like he was going to get clean looks versus Austin for as long as Austin was guarding him because he just can't get into his airspace. So like you're absolutely right that they need to target, like it needs to honestly be a center, AD, LeBron, Rui is like a 6-man, and then like a big 2 guard with Austin at point. And that needs to be how it is. And I don't know, like it's asking a lot of Austin to be full-time point, but I also wonder if that's like a better trajectory for him than some of the other options.
Yeah, I've tweaked it slightly to where I have the big center being the 6-man, right, who comes in and like on certain nights maybe comes in early and helps AD with a big that he doesn't want to body for 48 minutes. But yeah, I maintain that like on a typical team, Austin, I don't think would be a starting point guard. I think he'd be one of the starting backcourt players on any team in the NBA. But I don't think he's like a starting point guard specific on every team in the NBA. But on a LeBron team where LeBron can, he's going to handle the ball for the majority of the time. And occasionally Austin maybe gets the offense started. Maybe Austin does some stuff with the second unit. That's the perfect spot for Austin to be seen as like a point guard, right? The Lakers, when they won the championship, started, I believe, Avery Bradley as their point guard, and that was fine, And eventually, like in the finals, when they really wanted to unlock themselves, they started Caruso at point guard and KCP in the backcourt, and LeBron handled the point guard duties, and they beat the crap out of, granted, a somewhat broken Miami team, but they were up by 40 in that game, in a finals deciding game. Yeah, and I think if that is the way that they go about this, with Austin being seen as their point guard, You get a bigger physical shooting guard who actually today I'm going to sit down. Well, at some point, it's my anniversary, so I don't think it'll be today. But at some
Happy
point this
anniversary.
weekend, thank you. Yeah, Jen's like literally waiting for me right now. I'm taking her to go see the new Spider-Man movie. She's stoked. I'm stoked to see it again. It was really good. But if the Lakers see Austin as the point guard, bring in a physical two guard, and then either Rui is your starting small forward or LeBron is your starting small forward with a big there next to AD. Like that to me is the at the very least that team or that approach has the highest floor and probably highest ceiling if we're being completely honest, because like that is how you compete against that Denver team if we see this a similar team. What are you hearing? Last thing before we get you out of here, what are you hearing about Bruce Brown? Because at the parade, Mike Malone does the whole Miguel Malone, Miguelito, whatever we want to call him. Yesterday he was Mike, like MIC Malone. He was that's the drunkest we've ever seen a coach at a parade, right? Like usually they're like
There have been some great ones back in like the 90s and early 2000s before social media was a thing. There were some
yeah.
really great ones.
So I think like the closest might be like Riley when he said the Lakers were going back to back, right?
Yeah.
We're
gonna do it again.
Right. But even there, like he wasn't wearing a hat to the side with a chain on. So I actually liked that. I liked seeing that side of Malone. I like seeing him let his hair down a little bit. But anyway, he goes on the stage and Bruce Brown's standing right next to him, and he's kind of like pressuring, not like for lack of a better term, but pressuring Brown. Hey, you want to run it back, right? You want to run it back? You haven't made any money in your career to this point, but you want to take a discount, huh? Huh? What do you think? But like the thing with Bruce Brown is he's simple enough that I could see him doing it. Like he likes fishing, he likes hunting. He's kind of a simple kind of guy from what little I kind of know about him. So I could see it maybe happening. And if it does happen where he takes a discount and stays in Denver next year, that the Denver's just like that's how they go back to back, in my opinion. But what are you hearing about the chances of that happening?
So there's a strong belief inside the Nuggets, I think, that he comes back, and I just continue to be like, I think you're all just drunk on champagne.
Yeah. And cigar smoke.
Yeah, like there's so much cigar smoke in the locker room. Oh my god, I had such a headache. It was amazing though. That was the happiest locker. By the way, I've been in let's see, I've been in 9 championship locker rooms, and that is the happiest one I've ever been in. It's the most happy I've ever seen. Look, I think that Bruce wants to come back. He may mention, like he said on after Game 5, he said, "Look, money isn't everything."
Mm-hmm.
It's just like that's what you say when you're there and you're like so happy and you love those guys, because like that was a really close locker room. The chemistry was a really big deal on the Nuggets, but they're in Vegas right now, and they're going to party for a few more days, and then they're going to go their separate ways.
Yeah.
And then Bruce is going to get a call from his agent next week, and the agent's going to be like, "Hey, congratulations again. We got to talk about, I'm already getting offers because, tampering is just no longer a thing. Like this has been going on for a while. They're already getting offers, and someone's going to offer him $15 million a year at least. Yeah. It's either going to be like $20 million over 2 to 3, or it's going to be 15 per year for 4. And the difference between him having and the Nuggets can talk all they want about, look, if you take the player option for 8.5, we'll, I'm telling you right now, we'll re-sign you long term. You can say that, but the apron's going to make that almost impossible.
Yeah.
And if you get hurt, then Calvin Booth's going to be like, "Hey man, I'm really sorry. This is just how it goes." You got to take that $60 million. You have to take this. Like, you just can't do anything else. It sucks that the Nuggets are unable to retain a player that was so vital to their run, who is such a perfect fit, who wants to be in Denver. And the list of those guys is small. But wants to be there, who fit perfectly with the atmosphere, who is exactly what they needed. They all love playing with. It should be easier, but it's not. And so for me, I think he's gone. I think he's going to be on the market. I think he's going to get offers. I think he's going to get paid. And that's honestly what he needs to do. And he will always be a hero in Denver. He will be a hero, and he will never have to buy a drink in Denver for the rest of his life. He will always probably think fondly. Like, he will miss it. But I also don't think he's going to be able to regret it, because on some level, this is not about, it's not about, like, I do think that sometimes the money is too important for players, where I'm like, guys, what's the difference between, like, what's the difference in 80 million and 100 million? What's the difference here? What's the difference in 100 million and 125 million? Like, how is your life materially different? But the difference between 8 million guaranteed and 60 million guaranteed is massive. And so for me, I just continue to believe that he's probably going to be gone.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I keep going back to with Austin. That Austin, like, could theoretically take like a 1 year, 10-ish million deal and bet on himself again and hit free agency, or he could take a 4 year, $56 million deal, and that difference there at this stage of his career is huge. But hey, man, I've taken up enough of your time, too much of your time. Thank you very much, as always, for hopping on, Matt. Again, you can check out all of his work at the Action Network. I followed them all postseason long as I was doing my betting to get Avery some donuts, and I was able to buy her her fair share of donuts. So yeah, check out his work, all of their work over there. Thanks very much, Matt. It's always fun.
Thanks for having me.